All right, let's tackle one of the most common friction points in any app, that dreaded loading screen. But what if we could actually turn that waiting time from something frustrating into something, well, fantastic? In this explainer, we're going to dive into an elegant solution that does just that.
You've been there, right? We all have. You tap a button and you're immediately met with that infamous spinning wheel of doom. You're just staring at it. You have no idea what's coming, how long it's going to take, or if anything's even happening behind the scenes. It's an experience that right away creates a ton of uncertainty.
And you know, that uncertainty? That's the real enemy here. The problem isn't just that loading takes a few seconds. It's all about how that time feels to the user. An ambiguous, vague loader makes the wait feel way longer than it actually is, and that can quickly lead to frustration, or even cause someone to just give up and leave your app entirely.
And this really breaks it down perfectly. On one side, you've got the traditional spinner. It's totally disconnected from the content and tells you absolutely nothing. But on the other side, the skeleton loader, well, that's predictive. It actually shows you the shape of the content that's about to load. Psychologically, this is a huge deal. It reduces how long the wait feels, and it's just so much more reassuring. It feels like progress is happening.
So the big question is, how do we get from that frustrating old spinner to this much smarter, more user-friendly approach? Well, the answer is a technique that's not only powerful, but believe it or not, surprisingly simple to put into practice, especially if you have the right tools in your toolbox. So let's get a clear definition. A skeleton loader is basically a placeholder UI. You can think of it as a low-fidelity wireframe of the page that shows up almost instantly. I absolutely love the analogy of a blueprint or scaffolding. It shows you the structure and gives you a really clear idea of what's being built, even before the final stuff arrives.
To build this, we're going to look at two incredibly flexible components, the B4XDaisyDiv and the B4XDaisyLabel. These are like our Lego bricks for creating almost any layout, and they just so happen to have a very special feature baked right in.
Now, these components have all the properties you'd expect for styling your UI. You know, background color, rounded corners, shadows, all that good stuff. But look at that last one, the one in bold, IsSkeleton. This simple little boolean property, that's the key to everything. This is where the magic happens, and it's what makes this advanced UX pattern almost laughably easy to implement.
Okay, enough talk. Let's actually dive in and see just how easy it is to put this thing into practice. We'll take a look at a super common example, a user profile card.
So here's our goal. This is what we want the UI to look like in its final, fully loaded state. We've got a nice circular avatar, a title for the person's name, and a subtitle for their job. This is what the user should see once all the data is fetched and ready to go. So how do we bridge the gap between a blank screen and that nice loading state? Is it a bunch of complicated code? Nope, it's this. It's as simple as this one line of code. You just take your component, in this case the LBL title, and you set its IsSkeleton property to true. That is it. That's the magic switch right there.
And boom, here's the result. It's brilliant. Just by flipping that one switch, the component completely transforms itself. The circular B4XDaisyDiv for the avatar becomes a plain gray circle. The B4XDaisyLabels for the title and subtitle become these gray rectangles that perfectly match the size and position of where the text will eventually be. The structure is there, and it's there instantly.
Of course, you're not going to just toggle one element at a time, right? You want the entire UI to switch into its skeleton state all at once. And that's just as simple. You can easily create a little routine that just goes through and sets the IsSkeleton property on every component you need. So with one single function call, your whole interface can flip back and forth between its loaded and skeleton states.
But you know what really sells this and makes it feel modern and alive? It's that subtle little shimmer effect that sweeps across the placeholders. It's a visual cue that tells the user, hey, we're actively working on it. So how is that actually created?
Now, the component handles all of this complexity for you, which is awesome, but the technique itself is really clever. Let's peek behind the curtain. First, it just draws the basic gray shape. Then it creates a bright, angled gradient that's going to be our shimmer. And here's the really slick part. It clips the drawing area to the exact outline of that shape. Finally, it just animates the gradient, moving it across the screen. But because of that clipping, you only see the shimmer when it passes over the placeholder shape. It's a fantastic visual trick.
And what's really cool is that the exact same principle is used for the B4XDaisyLabel component. It starts by drawing a faded, kind of semi-transparent version of what the final text will be. Then it uses that very same clipping technique to animate a bright, solid version of the text right over the top of the faded one. The result is that beautiful, seamless shimmer effect even on your text placeholders. So when you put all of this together, you realize you've been handed a genuine user experience superpower. Seriously, you now have the ability to fundamentally change how people perceive your app's performance, which is huge.
Let's just let that sink in for a second. The bottom line is this: a massive improvement in user experience, a huge reduction in how long the wait feels, and a much more professional, polished app. All of it comes from just toggling a single Boolean property. All that complexity is handled for you, leaving you with a simple, incredibly powerful tool.
So, I guess the only question left is, now that you know how simple it can be to get rid of that dreaded spinner for good and build a more reassuring, modern interface, where in your own projects are you going to use this to build a better user experience? Thanks for tuning in.